What's going on, everybody? We are back for another edition of the Wrestling Heroes and Insiders podcast, aka The Whip Show. You know what it is. I am Deshaun Whip Dog Whipple, and my tag team partner is out. He is not here today. He's going out trying to be a star of his own. So I guess I got to go for the title. That's why I'm the world champ and he's the Intercontinental champion. But it's all good. Well, guys, you've already been rocking with us all season. You've seen the great episodes we've had. Now we're going to do something even better. Yes, I put a lot of pressure on him tonight. He's going to bring the fire. This man has a Facebook group. He has a web page. He podcasts himself on the Minutes to BellTime site. Now, when I first saw his name, I was going to jump through the TV because I thought it was Joey Ryan. And I wasn't having that on my show, man. I wasn't having that here. But no, I want to give it up to the creator of Minutes to BellTime. What's going on? What's going on, Ryan? How are you, man?
Man, I'm great. Thanks so much for having me on. I love your energy all the time. Whenever I put on your show, man, you have so much energy, and I thank you for that introduction. That's great.
I drink a lot of Red Bulls, man. I'm sorry. Red Bull, y'all need to sponsor me. You heard what I just said, man. You got one shout out for free. That's it. But anyway, how you holding up, man? In this crazy pandemic world we're in right now.
You know, it's been such a crazy, crazy time. I started the pandemic living in Maryland. I ended up moving to Florida, which is great for a site covering wrestling, right? Like there's so much wrestling going on down here. But things are good. Things are good. I think the pandemic is not impacting me as much as it is other people. I work, from home all the time. So things are good with me.
Nice. Now, have you been able to sneak into the Thunderdome? And I'm not talking about on the screens, but I know from time to time they let a few people come in. Have you been able to do that?
No, I have not made it to any WWE events or anything since I've been down here. I am going to Wrestlemania though, so that's going to be fun. AEW, very accessible. I've been up there a whole bunch of times, so okay. So yeah.
Now, before we get into some other stuff, I'm looking at your background. So there's no question he's a wrestling guy. I see the Monday Night Wars. I see the boy Boom Boom Colt Cabana back there. I see Andy Kaufman versus Lawler. No, before I ask my next question, are you married or anything?
I am married. You're not going to propose, are you?
I just blew the whole story, man. That was what I was going to do. No, man. But how does your partner feel about your love for pro wrestling, man? Because as we get older, our partners, they like, yeah, they like it. But so what do they think, man?
I'm very lucky. I am very, very lucky. My love for pro wrestling was a pre-existing condition, right? So it's like my wife knew that she was marrying into that. And, like all wrestling fans, I think your love and for wrestling kind of comes and wanes and things like that. But for the most part, mine has been pretty intense the entire time. And she kind of is along for the ride. She's there. In fact, for my website, she's taking notes right now for a wrestling show that's on during while we're recording. So nice. She's helping me out. She's actually very much on board. So
that's a beautiful thing. My ex that I used to date, she was not she heard of wrestling, but she wasn't really a fan. And I used to be a pro wrestler, so she came to my shows. Next thing I know, she was telling me like, bro, you got to start doing this in the ring. You're not doing enough. And even my current girl, she had never seen me in a wrestling space, and she went to a show that I was just emceeing, but seeing it live was a whole nother world, and now she's drawn in too, man. So that's a beautiful thing, man. Now, with that being said, what was the original start for you? What was the original love for pro wrestling with you?
So, I'm the same age as Wrestlemania, so I'm 37. So I can remember when I was very young. We had, video stores and whatnot. And my mom worked 11 to 7. She worked the graveyard shift. And back in those days, a good babysitter was going to the movie store and getting some tapes and throwing them in and stuff like that. So So there was a period of time when I was kind of watching myself by watching videos. And man, I ran through that video store's entire library of wrestling videos. And the one that I remember, the first one I remember, I don't know if it was the first one I watched, but the one that sticks in my head is WrestleMania 4. The tournament where Randy Savage wins the world championship at the end. That's my like first wrestling memory. And I think ever since then I've been hooked. So
Nice. I probably would have gave you more points if you said WrestleMania 3. You know, I'm a Detroit guy, Hogan and Andre, but WrestleMania 4 was awesome as well. I do agree.
Yep.
Well, that's good to hear, man. And as you stated, we get older, it wanes, but we never go away from it. Even if we say we want to, we just couldn't go away from it, man.
You bet. Yeah.
Now you just talked about you actually have been to some of the live AEW shows down there in Jacksonville. Mm-hmm. What is the atmosphere like now with, you know, I know they're in air, you know, they separate the people, but what is the atmosphere like now at AEW show?
So, you know what, I've been to several because I got like one of their like season passes, and it really is show dependent. But like when I was there when Kenny Omega won the world championship, and that crowd was intense. It was electric. In terms of just like the sort of the process you go through, everybody walks up. You have a socially distant line. You do a temperature check before you get in. You then go to your seat. Your seats are separated by like at least 6 or 7 seats from somebody else. And then it all kind of depends on the show. Like that show I'm talking about, you know, Sting debuted and Omega was there. That crowd was on fire the whole night. There's other shows where it's a little bit more subdued, but for the most part, the AEW crowds have been really, really good. So, oh man, what you got there?
Oh, you got to make sure since you're talking about Kenny Omega winning the championship, I got to make sure the belt's ready. You know, just saying. Now, with that being said, though, a lot of podcasters, for whatever reason, we talk about WWE all the time.
Yeah.
First, they have a longer lineage, which, you know, we all understand that. But where do you see AEW being in the next 5 years? How big do you really expect it to get?
What's really interesting is it's almost like with the next 5 months, I think are going to be so telling. If NXT moves to Tuesdays, then we're looking at AEW going uncontested, and it's whether or not they can achieve ratings similar to Raw and SmackDown at that point. And, you know, possibly, right now there's about 1.5 million people watching wrestling on Wednesdays. If they're all going to turn over and watch AEW, then that's really getting really close to Raw and SmackDown. I think, you know, if finances work, which they appear to because they got this long-term TV deal, 10 years from now, AEW, they're not going to be at the top of the mountain. That's WWE's territory. They've got these enormous deals all over the place. But AEW, I think, is going to be a player long-term, and they will be fighting it out ratings wise. And I think they're going to win some weeks.
Nice.
Maybe they'll have streaks too. But that's down the road. It's not now, but 1-2 years, if they continue, you know, solid storytelling and everything, I think that they'll be there.
Nice. Now, and I want to go back and want to say, I'm glad you actually talked about the safety protocols AEW has in place, because so many times people that don't live in Florida, all we hear is you guys are wide open, you don't care about anything. So it's good to hear that they actually do. It's just that, you know, it's a little bit more open than we are, but I'm glad you said that.
You know, if I could on that point, a lot of people think that, and I hear it all the time, like, oh, you know, your governor is great and everything, you know, they've opened everything up. It's true from a law perspective, everything's open, but then each of the businesses in Florida have to make their own decisions about what they're going to do. And I will tell you, most businesses still require us to wear masks and socially distant line and things like that, like you see in other places. Like you're not going to go to the grocery store and have a different experience in Florida than you would someplace else.
Now, you guys heard that. So stop trying to say bad things about Florida. You heard it right here live on the show. You heard it.
There you go.
Now, I also want to talk about this. You just talked about where you see AEW going in the next 10 years. But what would keep them from having the pitfalls that Impact Wrestling had. Because I saw something online the other day. There was a point Impact Wrestling was doing during the TNA days, 1.2 million fans. And obviously, different networks and things happen. But what keeps AEW from not going down that rabbit hole?
Well, I think a very committed focus on continuing to build new young talent that people are excited to see. I think a lot of what you see happening, some of the pitfalls are you focus on talent that's aging out as opposed to building talent from the bottom and new people. And to be honest with you, young people, like young fans, are attracted to young people on TV. So, if you can hook young people, then your audience grows as opposed to your audience aging out. So over the course of a 10-year period, if you keep having young people that are on the roster that continue to build up, then the young people will continue to come in, and hopefully they'll age and grow with your product.
Nice. I agree with that. But that leads into a question, and it was something that happened a few months ago, but I want to touch on it with you. AEW at one point followed the NBA right behind it. Now they had a time change, and the casual fan, or not even fans, just people got to watch it. And a lot of Twitter talked really bad about like Jericho's look and things of that nature. Do you think that kind of corresponds with what you just said about the young fan or the young viewer from the outside? They just saw this product and they thought those guys were just old. Some of them, anyway.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting with what you lead in from, right? Like, if you have a huge lead on that like that, I can see a situation where AEW is going to be like, well, we have this established star, let's put him out there so that we have this big lead in from the NBA game. People see somebody they know and they stay. Sometimes it works. For some people, it probably worked, and for some people, it didn't. But yeah, that's related, I think.
Speaking of the NBA, let's segue into, did you see John Cena talk to Shaq the other day?
Oh, man.
Oh, my God. If that wasn't classic TV, shout out to John Cena, though. He had to be a really good person to be able to interview, go around the question, but it didn't seem crazy or whatnot. But what did you think about that? Was Shaq straight up asking him? And I mean, he had to know that, yes, Cena's on TBS, but you know what I mean? He had to know Cena's done.
My first thought is it was such an awkward conversation for them, right? Like Shaq says, hey, did you see my match? Could you give me some pointers? And John's like, no, I didn't see your match. And they're like, I'm going to show it to you. so he like continues to bait him along. I felt bad for John in that sense, but like you said, he actually kind of turned it around and kind of, if it was a jab towards Cena, he jabbed back when he was like, man, Shaq, if you didn't have all that basketball talent, you'd have been great in the WWE.
Yep, exactly.
So I felt like John was quick on his feet and saved himself there. So that was good.
Shout out to him, man. For real. Salute to him, man. Now, I want to kind of go back to just talking about you. Minutes to BellTime. Yeah. How did you even get to that level of wanting to be a part of wrestling media? Most of us, we grow up, we watch wrestling, we want to be in the ring. What made you want to be in wrestling media? Well,
it's kind of this is an interesting story. I think for a lot of people, some people probably won't relate, but they'll probably like, the story is a good one, I think. So I went to college in upstate New York, graduated. Right out of college, I got a job with IBM, and I worked well. I moved myself up. I was an associate partner, and I felt like I was not really working in an area that I had a lot of enjoyment in. And so I called my wife on the way home from work one day, and I was like, what do you think if I quit without a plan? And she was, and luckily, we talked about our plan and stuff like that, and she was on board. And I said, I think I want to do something to improve wrestling fans' experience. And so then I started kind of like making a list. Okay, well, what does that mean? And I would write down things, and I still have like a long backlog of things that I'd love to do, but what kind of things can I do kind of with very little startup money and stuff like that I can, start running with. So launch a website, and I'm like, I'm going to do news, and I'm going to do reviews and results and things like that. And I'm going to track stats. I was like, I don't think a lot of people are doing that for wrestling. And, you know, it's entertainment and it's a show and stuff like that. And maybe it's not as important. But I always thought that if you look at the stats, you can kind of at least kind of in your head tease out what the booking team is at least thinking about when you look at a pattern of, you know, a wrestler's statistics and stuff. So I thought, well, maybe I can bring that in and that'll be something that'll be interesting. So so all of these things kind of led to, you know, me jumping in kind of in this area. Plus, I think at my age, I mean, I'm not an old guy, but I think jumping in the ring at this point might not be that great of an idea.
Nice.
So the media end and improving fan experience, I thought, from an outside perspective, would be kind of cool.
Now, I'm glad you talked about that, and definitely that is something different. And we were already talking about AEW. Don't know if they're keeping up the stats as much as they said they would when they first started. So I'm glad you're doing it. But with that being said, there's so many people in this space of wrestling podcasting, wrestling blogging, and you kind of touched on it a little bit, but I want to expound a little bit more. What really separates you from the 100,000 podcasts and bloggers we got, man? Talk a little bit more about that.
So I do a lot of things. First and foremost, my website. I think I've done a really nice job. I think it's a beautiful website, minutestobelltime.com. One of the things that's really cool that you go there, right at the top, there's a ticker. You know, like you see on ESPN or something like that, there's a little ticker that you can actually click on Raw and you can see the matches right there in the ticker. So I think that's a pretty cool thing for people to get a quick view. Also, if you click on my show results and stuff, it's quick and dirty bullets so that somebody who doesn't want to watch Raw or doesn't, missed Raw or whatever from this past week, they can go and they can quickly scan it. They don't have to read the word for word, punch by punch of the match, and they can see what they missed really easily. Like I mentioned, the stats and everything I do in a manner to where I try to make it easy for the person who's consuming it. So when I do a post where I'm, a Facebook post or something where I'm saying, here's what the results of the show or whatever, you click on it, this person beat this person. I record the match times. I think that's also unique and a differentiator for me. When I do my podcast, I have a daily wrestling news show. So it's actually playing in the back right there. But I try to keep it between about 30 minutes. And the idea there is that it's highly consumable, right? Like it's a daily show, so a lot of content, but it's, people can listen to it and quickly learn, okay, here are the news items from the day or whatever, and that I need to know about to move on. So that's where I try to kind of leverage. And then I do a newsletter at the end of the week. So if you didn't want to watch the show, you didn't want to, do any of that, my Body Slam Brigade newsletter, it's broken up by company. You can go through and read all the news about WWE and then Impact and then Ring of Honor and then New Japan and NWA. And so I broke it all up there. And then I also cover some of the Florida independent scene down here since I was trying to learn it myself. So, dove in. So there's a lot of, so I offer a lot and I try to make it very easily consumable.
You guys heard it. You know what to do. Now, with that being said, a lot of times, no matter what we do, the wrestlers still consider us marks. Mm-hmm. How do you feel the industry has received you? And have you been able to break through that whole, oh, he's just a mark with a newsletter and a website? So they actually like, okay, this guy is talented. He knows what he's doing.
Well, where I've focused my interaction in terms of the wrestling business, like the WWE and the Ring of Honor, well, not Ring of Honor so much, but the WWE guys and like the AEW guys, in a lot of ways, I consider from a media perspective, I cover them. I kind of view the fact they don't even see me. That's kind of how I look at it. And, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, but it's never much of, a lot of interaction between us. I have focused a lot of my effort on the independent scene and trying to, meet talent at that level, wrestlers at that level or referees or promoters. And they're great actually, at that, when you're trying to, talking to them, it's as good, if I have them on my show, it's as good an experience for them as it is for me. Right. So, and it exposes them. I learn who they are. And then long term, I think, if I build that connection with them and they grow up and they get a, big contract, later on, I've got a connection with them. So I think that the independent community has received me very well. And the other, the main promotions, like I said, I don't think they know I'm there.
I get it.
If I, at the point when I grow, 10 years from now, like we talked about AEW, that might be a different conversation, but
Understandable. Well, I'm glad you said it because in Florida, it really is a hotbed for independent pro wrestling. If you could give me 3 guys people should be looking out for off the top of your head, who would you say and why?
3 guys. So there's a guy named Jake St. Patrick. He's actually been on AEW Dark, but he's originally from Chicago. He's moved to Florida because that's where wrestling is right now. So him, Ariel Levy. Ariel Levy is actually a movie star from Chile, who also he has a great story, and I actually had an interview with him on my show. But he is a movie star in Chile. He moved to Florida to pursue his wrestling career, and he's also been on AEW Dark. And then the third guy, watch out for, if you see the name Will Austin, he calls himself the King of Flight. He is very popular down here in the Florida promotions, but he's starting to expand. And I saw he was just recently working in Texas, and I saw him in the ring with Sammy Guevara and Gino Medina and different people. So those three names, I think, are names that we will see in the bigger promotions in the years to come.
Nice. And you just talked about the brother from Chile that's a movie star, and I find it amazing in this day that we got Luke Perry's son wrestling. We had David Otunga, who was at the time was dating, married to whatever, Jennifer Hudson, who was one of the biggest singers at the time. So many people are coming out of the woodwork, and we're finding out, no matter what, even with David Arquette, the Netflix documentary, these guys already were set. They were good, but something inside them made them still have to test their luck in the wrestling world. And a lot of them actually went hard at it. It wasn't just a joke, gimmicky thing, But what do you think about that, man? So many people that they were good. They were out of here, but they had to come back and test their heart and test the wrestling world. What do you think? Why do you think they do that?
Well, it's an interesting thing. Like I always felt like wrestling fans are kind of niche, right? Like, everybody is a basketball fan or an NFL fan. Not everybody's a wrestling fan. And it was when I talked to Ariel Levy, the guy I mentioned before, he was telling me a story about he was doing like a late show, like a Jimmy Kimmel type of thing down in Chile. And they asked him, is actor, that's what you wanted to be ever since you were a little kid, right? And he said, actually, no. And then it was a snowball from there. He told the story, he wanted to be a wrestler. And then the promotion started reaching out to him. And then he leaned in really hard. He's like, I'm going to go and I'm going to train. And, and so he's working hard at it. I don't know. I think wrestling is a combination of stage work along with athleticism. It's unlike any other form of entertainment or performance, right? Like it blends all these different things. And if you love it, you love it. And there's nothing else that can substitute in for it.
I mean, even when we talked about Shaq earlier, just watch Shaq's face in that ring. You can tell he really was enjoying what he was doing, and he's been a fan of it for a while. There was an interview I saw with Floyd Mayweather 4 years after his match, and he was talking about he loved that way more than anything he did in boxing. Well, probably except for the money, but you know what I mean? Even Mike Tyson, 20-something years later, watch interviews of how Mike Tyson still refers to his time in the WWE. So that's just, I just think that's amazing, man. But with that being said, and we're talking about people you've met or celebrities in general, it's time for our segment called The Mark Out Moment. Now, that doesn't mean you literally were about to pee your pants because you saw somebody, but has there ever been a moment since you've been a part of wrestling media now, that whether you interviewed somebody or even before then, that you were like, man, this is it. I can't believe I'm standing next to, and you, the little kid in you that was watching WrestleMania 4 almost popped out. What was your mark out moment?
It's funny, actually. Whenever I have, do an interview for the Daily Wrestling News Show, or I'm at a show and I'm near somebody, I kind of always have that little bit, so there's a little bit of nervous jitters about meeting anybody. And so I think I have it almost every single time. But I will kind of say the one before I did wrestling media, I was living up in Maryland, and Maryland Championship Wrestling had Kurt Angle. And so he was doing a signing and stuff like that. So I bought whatever the platinum package was. He was going to sign multiple things and, whatever. And I was like, okay, here. So what am I going to say to Kurt? And I had myself in the line the whole time I was in line. What am I going to say to Kurt? What am I going to say to Kurt? I got up there. I said hi and bye. And that was because I was like, I didn't know what else. I had nothing else I could figure out what to say. So.
I mean, he was a real American hero. I get it.
Yeah.
Well, with that being said, you talked about a lot of stuff you're currently doing, but creative people, we always got something that we kind of hide in the back that we haven't released yet. What are some of the things that you plan on doing that you haven't released on the website? Like, give us an exclusive, man. You got a documentary coming out or something? What do you got coming up, man? I know you got something.
Let's see. What haven't I put into action here? Well, one of the things that I have partners that are doing things like pick'em leagues and things like that. But in the back of my head, when I started this thing, one of the things that I thought was desperately needed in wrestling that is not being done, as far as I can tell, is a fantasy sports platform where you can have like a league. And, you can follow it, you draft a team, and you can follow it throughout the whole time. Now, there are people that are doing this manually, and they assign points based on appearances and wins and losses and things. But I think pro wrestling really needs like the intense one that's like, okay, he hit a finisher, that's 10 points. He won by pinfall, that's 30 points, as opposed to count out, which is 10. Like some crazy platform like that, where you can do the whole, it's like just like fantasy football, but I want to do that, but it's down the road. Okay. So there's your exclusive.
Y'all heard that? It's coming. It's coming though. I'm gonna hold him to it, by the way. Now, I'm sorry. I keep looking at your background. I'm seeing all this memorabilia. What is your favorite piece?
Oh, you can't quite see it, but they're right where you see Colt Cabana.
Yeah.
In fact, I'll roll over for the show. I'll do this right here.
Oh man!
Signed poster by Harley Race.
Oh my God!
8-time world champion Harley Race, right there.
I know it's a story behind it. How did you get it? How did you get it signed? Talk to me.
Well, to be honest with you, I went to a Florida show down here not that long ago, Ignite Wrestling, and they had a company, Wrestling Warehouse, and he deals in this merchandise. And so he had this there, and I kind of walked up and I was like, man, is that real? I'm like, how can it be real, right? Like Harley's not with us anymore.
Right.
And sure enough, had a picture of Harley signing it with a little certificate of authenticity and everything. So it's legit. There's no crazy thing. I didn't run into Harley or anything like that. But it's just one I picked up. But I do love that. I think it's a great piece.
Nice. Now, speaking of having collectibles and memorabilia, Conrad Thompson, shout out to him, probably the greatest guy right now doing this whole podcast thing. I'm still gonna try to take a spot, but that's neither here nor there. But
we all are,
man. But with him, he would say he collects wrestling belts, but he said he would never sell any of them. What about you? Do you get into selling and trading any of your memorabilia, or do you want to just keep everything and have it for the future and everything?
I don't know. I think I would probably sell things, but I don't have anything like he does, and like a ring worn belt, things like that he has. I have a lot of this stuff that you can see, like posters that are signed and stuff. Almost everything back there is signed. But I don't have anything like that. No, like old world titles or anything like that were worn to the ring. But if I did, and even this stuff, I guess for the most part, this stuff could go. But so I wouldn't have a problem. But I haven't really dealt in that market too much.
Okay.
But the other cool things I have is I went to AEW Revolution. Well, I'm pointing it all out because I can't get the fingers. And then there's Revolution.
You got it. There you go.
So I got those event posters from the show. So those are kind of cool things to do.
Now, a question I like to have when I have interviewers or people from the media on: who would be your dream interview?
Ooh, dream interview. Well, as far as wrestling goes, I mean, I'd love to talk to a guy like John Cena, who like we talked about earlier. I'd love to talk to, I would have loved to talk to Randy Savage. I wish he was still with us. I think he'd be a great person to talk to. He probably has great stories and stuff like that. Gosh, I think that for me, it'd be somebody, my ideal candidate would be somebody who could talk about different aspects of wrestling, not just like somebody that is an in-ring performer, but also somebody who was kind of in management or things like that. Maybe like Jim Ross would be a great person. Even somebody like Cody Rhodes, who does, he has the whole like family lineage to kind of draw from and things like that. Somebody like that, I think.
Okay. Now, with so many people transitioning from in-ring action to behind the scenes, what do you think about guys like Chris Jericho commentating or Paul White? And even back in the day, Macho Man, when he transitioned, even though Macho Man couldn't stay behind the mic, he had to get back in the ring in WCW. But what do you think about that, man? Do you think it's good for the business, or do you think we need a good voice like a Gordon Solie and stuff back in the day?
Well, there are definitely those that are better at it than others, right? Like, there is no denying how great Jesse Ventura was. There is no denying how great Jerry the King Lawler was. In fact, Mr. Perfect was great in the short period of time that he did it. So there are some people that are truly great at commentary as well. I think Chris Jericho in time could be as well. I mean, he's done a great job every time that he's been on, but the difference is right now he's also playing a character that he's active with. So it's a little weird, but some are very good, some are bad, and you kind of have to weed through them. I actually think Samoa Joe does a great job on Raw. But Paul White, I'm not sold on Paul White yet. I really, really like the Big Show as a person and stuff. So he's going to get tons and tons of time and chances from me, but he's not quite there yet. I think.
I agree. Even when I heard that, I'm like, I don't know, but we'll see. We'll see.
But it can be good for the different various products and stuff like that. I mean, Colt Cabana is also a very good commentator. He spent years doing it on Ring of Honor and stuff. And you have a recognized name that people can attach to right away when they turn on the station that's there throughout the whole program. I think that's a pretty good asset.
For sure. Now, and hold on 1 second. Got to make sure I charged up. There we go. Okay. Now, what are some of the podcasts that you like to listen to?
Oh gosh, so I listen to those Conrad Thompson's ones we talked about. I've listened to probably the first 150 episodes of Bruce Pritchard's podcast with Conrad. I listened to a bunch of the Jim Ross ones. I do listen to PW Insider. I listen to Wrestling Observer. Just not every day, not every week or anything, but I check in with them to see what they're saying and stuff to kind of check myself more than anything else. But I listen to Jericho's podcast as well. I think he does a nice job. He always has on interesting guests, maybe more so before he signed with AEW because he had like his run of the entire wrestling business at that point. But I still think he does a pretty good job.
What about Cornette, man?
I don't listen to Jim Cornette.
You can't do it. Oh, you know what? They say John Cena is polarizing. But Cornette, man, that guy, you either love him to death or you're like, this kid is horrible. Like, really?
Yeah.
I
would,
mean, as a person, not even but is there a reason you don't listen to Cornette? You don't have to shoot on him if you don't want to. Like,
no, I mean, I can say generally that I think some of the things that he's said, and I can't even point to an example, but there have been things that he said that turned me off in the past. And I think he goes a bit extreme about things. He, talk about people like either writing him off or loving him. He's kind of the same way about everything in wrestling, right? He either loves it or absolutely hates it. So I will say there are definitely, I don't want to discredit the man. Like there are things that he's probably, spot on about. But some of the polarizing attitude, I can't go for. I am of the opinion that there is so much wrestling out there, and I don't want to be in the business of tearing it down. And I think that that's another differentiator for me, I think, is that I am in the business of trying to make the experience better. So I'm more interested in talking about what I love than what I hate. And I got to be fair. If there's things that I think aren't good, I got to bring it up and whatever. But I'm much more focused on what's great. And there's so much of it, especially, if you, between all of the different stuff that you can watch on a weekly basis. I mean, I don't know about you, but I could easily watch 40 hours of wrestling every week.
Oh, yeah. Now that brings up my next question. Is there too much wrestling on TV, or are we accessible to way too much wrestling right now?
I'd say that in some cases we get quantity over quality. I don't think quality wrestling is sustainable at the quantity that we're getting it. For instance, AEW has a dark, now they have dark elevation, and there are a lot of matches that are very predictable on those. Same thing with WWE main event and other things like that. So the more programming you add, the less good it is, I guess, in some cases. But I love, watching an NWA show. They just came back on Fight TV. It's a completely different show, right? You have a different atmosphere. Everything's different about it. Same thing with Ring of Honor. Completely different. You turn it on. The cameras are tight. It's focused. There's no crowd right now. When there is a crowd, they're usually intense. But each one of them is different. I watch New Japan Pro Wrestling, and that's a different experience. So it's too much if you're trying to watch it all. And there's some things that I think people can cut out pretty easily. Impact Wrestling is another example of it's a completely different show than Raw or AEW. I think they're a lot more lighthearted. They focus on comedy, things like that. Sometimes the storylines are completely not believable,
right?
And that almost makes it, good in the sense that it's not trying to be too serious. So
yeah, agreed.
There is probably an abundance and maybe more than what we need.
With that being said, with so much wrestling we got going on right now, we're about 3 to 4 months in to the Forbidden Door. Mm-hmm. What do you think about it right now? Do you think it's been beneficial for Impact, AEW, and now even, I believe, doing a little bit of work with New Japan as well? What do you think about that? Do you, or even see kind of personality now?
I think it's absolutely wonderful. Has it been beneficial for Impact? I think it has. I think that we'll see a lot of how beneficial it is at the Rebellion pay-per-view when Kenny Omega and Rich Swann face off title for title. Does that generate a lot of pay-per-view buys for Impact? It definitely got a lot of buzz back in December when they first kind of opened the Forbidden Door. A lot of buzz for Impact that they didn't have before. So I think it was great there. In terms of the whole thing, I loved Kenta on AEW. I thought that was great for New Japan to get that exposure in the United States. Because the interesting thing about that character is a lot of people had heard the name Kenta, but didn't realize that he was Hideo Itami in WWE until he walked out and, oh, that guy. Yeah, I know him. So I think that there is also a ton more potential for this thing. And when the door opened the first time, Impact and AEW, people had fantasy booking all up and down everywhere. They had so many ideas. And I think we've only scratched the surface of what it could be, and we'll see how much they actually do. But I'd love to see some of those New Japan guys come over and wrestle in AEW. Kenny Omega has long-standing feuds with those guys, so could be very good.
Does Kenny win the belt? Does he win the Impact title? Or do they do a schmaz? What do you think? At Rebellion.
I have a hard time believing that they're going to do anything. I don't think there's going to be a DQ or count out. I think there's going to be a legitimate champion with both belts. I can't see Tony Khan signing off on a weird finish and have his guy associated with it.
Yeah.
But I could be wrong. I hope we see something really interesting like that, like a double champion belt collector character.
I agree. I think that would be so beneficial for Impact. And I love Rich Swann, but Kenny Omega walking around with that belt on AEW as well, that's exactly what Impact needs. But
or Rich Swann walking around with that AEW.
Now I'm gonna tell you. Now, if he does that, it will shock the world. It will pop the whole industry. You're absolutely right. It will pop the whole industry because nobody expects that at all. And that's one thing that sometimes we don't get anymore in pro wrestling. Things that are so unpredictable. A lot of this stuff, in our main events, we're like, you know what I mean? But speaking of booking things, our next segment is called Book Yourself. So you're already doing great in the wrestling media space. But if you could put yourself anywhere in the world of professional wrestling, I'm talking about working for a promotion, whether backstage, but where would you book yourself in the total fantasy booking world?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that if I could have my life to live in the most ideal way possible, I'd get a bunch of training and I would do commentary. I think that's where I would, and which company would I do it for? I don't know. I kind of don't love the idea of wearing a suit to work every day. It's kind of one of the reasons I left IBM. So I don't see myself in the WWE calling Wrestlemania. That doesn't even sound fun to me at this point. But maybe I don't know, like maybe a Ring of Honor would be cool. Maybe an NWA would be nice. But I think a commentary role would be very interesting for me.
Nice. Now, you're talking about something close to my heart, and I wasn't going to bring it up too much, but I was a big NWA Power fan from even the first incarnation. Mm-hmm. So I'm glad what they're doing with Fight TV. And I'm rest in peace to the question mark. Loved him to death, you know what I'm saying? But where do you think NWA Power fits in all this wrestling world? Because you're right, their show was totally different. It was some good wrestling, but it was a little bit of lighthearted stuff as well, especially with some of their comedy vignettes with Austin Idol and whatnot. Yep. Do you think they get bigger? Do you think they sustain for another couple of years under Billy Corgan?
I hope so, because, like I said, it's not like adding that show to a weekly schedule isn't a problem for me because it's so different. So I really hope that they can. How do I see them? I guess it's I think they can sustain. I don't know if they can sustain with the paywall model. They could prove me wrong. What do I know? I mean, I'm not doing it, so I don't have their projections and their plans and stuff like that. But it didn't work for Championship Wrestling, Primetime Live, United Wrestling Network. They couldn't get that to work. Maybe NWA is a stronger brand and it will. But I think a pay-per-view model is going to be a tough one to sustain because they're not the kind of company that's going to tell you what match is coming up on Power. They don't really advertise their matches in advance, so it's hard for people to shell out money to go watch it. But I would love for them to be around for many years. And I think one thing that's really interesting, when you look at that first incarnation of Power that you were talking about, Ricky Starks, Eddie Kingston, Thunder Rosa, all these people that basically, when everything kind of shut down, they really blossomed elsewhere, right? They all showed up at every place else because James Storm is another, Eli Drake, LA Knight, whatever you want to call them now. These guys that it gave them kind of another avenue to apply their trade, and they got a lot of buzz. So there they go.
Nick Aldis, NWA champion, has been the flag bearer for a while now. What do you think about him? There's a lot of people online that says he is actually one of the few guys that feels like a world champion, the way he carries himself, his work in the ring. Are you a big Nick Aldis fan?
I am. I think he does a great job in that role. He does carry himself like a champion. Um, I give him a lot of credit because it must have been hard over the years to maintain that, um, that demeanor and that character and that, when everything kind of, the COVID happened and power shut down and stuff like that, it had to be hard for him. But I think he has done a great job whenever he went to Ring of Honor in the past like that. You know, I think Nick's a great champion. I can't even begin to think of who they would transition to if he wasn't there though.
I agree.
That dominant.
And I heard Bruce Pritchard talking some trash about him, and I'm like, maybe he hasn't watched him in the Power. Maybe he's thinking of when he was Magnus or something
Magnus, yeah.
5 years ago, because he's the national treasure is true. Like that's my guy, and I said the same thing. Even back then, I just don't know who they could have get to run the gauntlet with the belt. I don't see it, man.
When Nick first won the first time when he won the NWA championship and he had that, he wasn't planning on being the champion, right? He tells the story about how he had all of these independent bookings, all over the place. And then he got, in a situation, he won the NWA World Championship and he became a traveling champion because he went from independent to independent, defending that championship everywhere. And he actually became an attraction, that 10 pounds of gold series and everything. It's kind of, Bruce may not have seen him like you said, but it's really between him and Billy Corgan. They really made something with that NWA title.
Now we can't get out of here without talking about the big company and all. And you already said you're going to WrestleMania. You're going for both nights?
Both nights, yep.
Okay. Now, obviously, this is the first time WWE has had real fans back in over a year. How do you think the fans are going to receive WrestleMania as a whole? And now we've seen Roman Reigns transition to what a lot of people wanted Roman to be for years before this. What do you expect? And you're going to be a fan of this as well. What do you expect WWE to bring to us in that type of WrestleMania atmosphere?
I think this is going to be wild in the sense that for the last year, especially since Thunderdome, WWE has been able to control the message in terms of who's getting cheered and who's not getting cheered. And they don't know, and we don't know if there's an undercurrent of support for somebody, right? And so at WrestleMania, we may find out that somebody low on the card gets a huge pop and they should have been getting pushed. But we didn't know because the whole crowd was being controlled and stuff. So I think it's going to be wild. I think it's going to be interesting. The WrestleMania crowd itself, it might also be weird because it's going to be 25,000 people. I think that's the number, 25,000 people in a stadium for 60. So it's going to be spaced out and maybe it won't have the big booming buzz that like a jam-packed crowd would. But I think the fans will receive it well. And I think that WWE will learn things from it because like I said, their talent they've been making all the decisions about the talent without having fan input. And now they're going to get it.
Now, and this is going to be my final question before our final segment. Like I said, it's been a year. It's been a year that we've been in this pandemic wrestling world. When the fans finally do come back full time, because they obviously right after WrestleMania, we go back to the Thunderdome. But what do you expect from when the fans come back? How does wrestling shift? How does it change? Because obviously we won't be able to just go back to what we saw before.
It's kind of just crazy with where I was living at the time, but I was living in Annapolis, Maryland. So it's kind of just outside of Baltimore and just outside of Washington, D.C. when the pandemic started. So I got in my car and I drove up to Philadelphia for the Elimination pay-per-view on March 8th, came home, got in my car and drove to Washington, D.C. for Monday Night Raw on March 9th. Those were the last two WWE televised shows with fans. And And now here we are, the first one coming back at WrestleMania. I'll be there too. So it's kind of bittersweet in that regard. But when I look back at those events that I went to back in March, um, there was already, I think, an attendance issue at live shows, and I think that with the hesitation from fans to just jump back in, I think they're going to have more of an attendance issue than what people might think. I think that maybe there'll be a big buzz at first, and people will fill the arenas, but then I think it might get hard, to fill those arenas again. And WWE had not been doing well in like the 300 level seating at a lot of arenas and stuff, or the hard camera side, for a long time. So I don't know. I hope that I'm wrong about that. It seemed like wrestling was about to pop before the pandemic, right? We had AEW starting, WWE was going on Fox. We had all these great things that were happening. It seemed like a lot of buzz. Maybe wrestling was about to pop and get more popular than it has since the 90s or whatever. But we shall see. I hope it's as big as ever, because it'll be good for your podcast and good for all the stuff I'm doing and stuff like that if people get really interested again. But we could be sitting on the edge of a boom or the edge of a bust, and it's hard to tell which it is.
That's actually bananas. You said you were at the last two live events. I actually had tickets to that Friday SmackDown in Detroit that was the first one they canceled, man. Yes, we did actually, like you were talking about the buzz. I also work for a trivia company. I'm a trivia host, and we actually did a wrestling trivia event. The prize was 4 tickets to SmackDown in Detroit, and yeah. We had just partnered with WWE for the free tickets and all that. It was crazy. But you're right. It's going to be something to watch, something to see when we come back, man. Well, before we go to the final segment, I want you to shout out your podcast and everything and everywhere they can get a hold of you one more time, okay?
So, first things first, minutestobelltime.com is the website. You can go there. Actually, you can go to minutestobelltime.com/offerings, and you get like everything that I do. But on Facebook, it's Minutes to Bell Time. On Instagram, it's Minutes to Bell Time. On Twitter, it's Minutes to Bell Time. And I got everything there. That's where the podcast is, Daily Wrestling News Show. You can get that on the Minutes to Bell Time Facebook page, or the Minutes to Bell Time YouTube page, or on Apple Podcast, or on Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. You can get the Daily Wrestling News Show, and the newsletter is Body Slam Brigade, and you can get that. There'll be if you go to minutestobelltime.com, there's going to be a pop-up that says, do you want to join the list? And you can go that way, or you can go to bodyslambrigade.com and sign up that way. But I think that's all the places. Okay. Get me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. That's good.
You're still doing merchandise too, right? Because I remember seeing t-shirts and everything, man. Okay.
In fact, I'm wearing,
you didn't send me you didn't send me a 2X shirt, but it's okay. It's fine. I'm not going to ask for one.
Well, after the show, we'll get your address. But the Minutes to Bell Time shop. If you go to the website, there's a big banner that says shop. You click on that. There's a whole bunch of shirts there. I worked with an artist actually from Chattanooga, and he drew a lot of the characters and stuff that I use on my posts and whatnot. And I said, you know what? Let's do a series where we do these like really popular wrestling moves and stuff. And so we did, and those are on stickers and shirts and stuff on the shop. And so there's a gorilla press slam and a drop kick and a crucifix and different things. So there's a chair shot one that I really like. So yeah, I love those shirts. Are great. They're $20 too, so we really can't beat them.
And yo, you guys heard them. Definitely, the shirts are dope. I look at them all the time. I should have been ordering one. I'm taking forever, but I'm ordering one myself. I want one, and check out everything. His website is great. I'm telling you, great stuff. But now it's time for the final segment of the evening. And it's called Ring the Bell. You can talk about anything, because I give you 60 seconds. You can promote yourself again. You can inspire people. You can talk about what you ate for lunch, whatever you want to do. But Ryan from MinisterBell.com, you have 60 seconds, and I want you to ring the bell.
Well, again, minutes to belltime.com to find out everything that I'm doing. But like I said throughout the show, the big thing is try to find ways to improve your own experience. I'm a firm believer in that there's enough out there to love about wrestling that we don't always have to be tearing it down. So do that. Look for that thing that you love about wrestling and focus on that. And if there's something you don't like, maybe don't watch it instead of getting irritated at it. And if you still want to stay up on it, you can subscribe to the Body Slam Brigade newsletter and you can read about what happened, things like that, but without having to put yourself through something you don't like. But the wrestling fans, a lot of times have a tendency to be opinionated and sometimes toxic. And in some ways that makes people not want to participate. That's the wrong choice. Definitely participate. Wrestling is fun and there's nothing else like it. And find the thing that you love about it and focus on it.
Thank you very much. And I'm glad you said that because you're right. There's a difference between being passionate and toxic. And I'm going to tell you, a lot of the wrestling fans, I look at these pages, they definitely walk that line, man. Whew. With that being said, thank you for coming on the show, man. I had a great time. Hope you enjoyed yourself tonight.
Absolutely.
Y'all heard it. Make sure you check out everything, ministerbell.com, the Body Slam Brigade. I want you guys to be a part of all of it. But I got to get out of here. So, you know what to do. You can check us out each and every Friday. We're on iHeartRadio, Google Play, Spotify, YouTube, Anchor. Just put in the Whip Show podcast. We drop new episodes each week. Daryl Pace, he's going to be back. I'm still looking for him, kind of like when Leslie Nielsen was looking for Undertaker years ago. I'm going to find him again. Devastating Daryl Pace is going to be back. Don't worry, guys. Sooner or later. But I'm out of here. So we got Deshaun Whip Dog Whipple, and we got the man Ryan Joy. We will see you next time on the Wrestling Heroes and Insiders podcast, a.k.a. The Whip Show. Take care, guys.